All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
And I'm Geo.
And today we are going to be talking about Eiyuden Chronicle, 100 Heroes. I believe I said that correctly. And then we're going to be also talking about the success of crowdfunding RPGs in the past. We're going to be going in and just basically deep diving into a lot of these games and just talking about crowdfunding in general. And we're also going to be talking about the future prospects of crowdfunding, what kind of developers we'd like to see go and crowdfund their own game, their own project, and just have a general discussion about that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to be dissecting and talking about our favorite RPGs on the Switch. And then we'll wrap things up with what we've been playing lately. So before we start off this podcast, I do want to introduce our guest for the, 1.5 times? I don't know. This
One
is
and a half, yeah.
This is the second time that Geo has been on this podcast, but this is the first time you all have seen him. But welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
We're doing pretty good over here. We're really glad to have you on here. And Geo is from the SwitchRPG YouTube page. Do you want to kind of give our audience a rundown of what you guys do and where they can find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. I am one of many, actually. SwitchRPG.com. We cover Nintendo Switch RPGs. I am on the content creator side for YouTube as well as the podcast. I have a podcast there. But I mainly do the YouTube. I do a lot of Let's Plays, some other type of videos, but it's mostly Let's Play videos, and the podcast are, again, one of my mainstays. But we do a lot of reviews, op-ed pieces on SwitchRPG.com. We cover it all, really. We're just, obviously, just like you guys, we're just fans of one of the best genres in games, RPG, right?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, Eric has to put it in his top 2 and be a Debbie Downer here, but yeah, I feel you right there. So guys, I'm telling you, if you are fans at all of our channel, go check out their channel, SwitchRPG. I'm gonna have a link in the description. Check out their website. They're putting out content way more than we are. So
almost daily, actually.
Yeah. So
I need to slow it down.
We're once a week, if you're lucky, twice a week, and we're good with that. But they put a lot of work into what they do over there. So definitely go give them some love and check out what they do, because I think you guys are gonna like it. You know, they have their podcast, which is very similar to ours. But more focused on the Switch side, which is cool. Mm-hmm. So definitely go check them out. But for our first topic, I don't know if you guys saw, but Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, it's this new game that's being developed by the series creator and director of Suikoden 1 and 2, which is a pretty big deal. So I'm going to get this wacky trailer up on the screen here. But essentially, this is a game, like I said, that's being developed by the series director and creator of Suikoden 1 and 2, the Golden Era. And it's also being worked on by 3 other Suikoden veterans from that era. And it's a really big deal because this is the first time in 25 years that these people have actually worked together on any project at all. So this has got a lot of people really, really excited, I think for good reason, because, I mean, who doesn't like the Suikoden games, especially 1 and 2? So people are really hoping a return to those games, at least, a glimmer or a speck of the quality that we got with those games. And the fact that you have so many well-known people working on this is pretty fantastic. I mean, you have the composer from Golden Sun, you have the composer from the Wild Arms games as well working on this. So you got a lot of big-name people, and it's created a lot of hype around the internet when this was announced this past week on Kickstarter. And it's already reached over $2.6 million. It reached its baseline goal in the first day. And, it's promising a blend between Suikoden and Octopath Traveler style graphics. It's a little bit more detailed than that. But this is a really big deal. It's got people really, really excited. I mean, they've got a very clear goal-oriented page there. They have artwork. They have a trailer. They have a clear vision. And it's got a lot of people really, really excited. They've made it clear this is not in the Suikoden series because they don't want to get sued. But it's very clearly Suikoden related. They have this goofy trailer where they're all like kind of walking around, shaking hands and wearing pots in their head. It's kind of goofy. But
Then
yeah,
boss battle with Koji Igarashi, my man.
from Castlevania fame and Bloodstain, right? So that's and he expressed his support for this as well, because everyone here is prior Konami, workers, right? They have a past with Konami, so it's a pretty big deal. And Konami has shown no interest in supporting Suikoden. They said they've actually lost money on Suikoden 4 and 5, or they said it wasn't profitable anyways. And so I think that's crazy. I think that's a problem with Konami. But anyways, we're having this game. It's been kickstarted. It's making a lot of money, and or at least it's got a lot of money up front now. So what did you guys think? Gio, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, the game looks incredible.
Right.
I love the dynamic lighting, the lighting effects in general. What really caught my attention was and they confirmed this kind of recently, was what positional battles. Basically, it's not your standard side profile. It's not your front to back. It's kind of got different angles and elevations, and that kind of stuff really kind of interests me. And I think they just had an update where they confirmed that you tactically during a battle, it's all gonna matter, and I think that's good to have a lot of these little small details in changes in complexity to a standard turn-based game. So that and again the HD 2D thing, whatever that is, really drew me in, and I instantly backed it. I was probably one of the first ones. I had to have been one of the first ones. But yeah, it just looks beautiful. It really does look good.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that stands out about this is, besides there's the veteran status of everyone working on this, is just that art style is the first thing that just really draws you in, because it's kind of interesting because they've specified Octopath Traveler as an influence here on their page. And Octopath Traveler, if I remember correctly, said they were heavily inspired by Suikoden, right? So this is like the creator of Suikoden being influenced by something that was influenced by him. It's coming in full circle here. And so I think it's really cool from that perspective. I'm a little curious though, because after Octopath Traveler came out, Square they filed a copyright on the HD 2.5. I don't know if it's just the terminology. I thought they copywritten the look of it, but that seems, I guess that's kind of broad, but
yeah,
apparently
I don't know
this
how you
isn't
can
an
copyright like a style.
Right.
I don't know that you can. I think they just trademarked the terminology.
That was about worthless. We'll just call it
It's
something
weird. It's almost like saying you can copyright going left and right on a flat platform. And Super Mario gets the copyright for that. No,
right.
The game is allowed to do that.
Good thing nobody, filed a copyright for the D-pad, because I don't know what we'd be using today.
They did.
Oh, did they?
Yes. Yep.
But the story behind that is there is a little ball-like platform that the D-pad rests on when you move a D-pad around on the Nintendo. So the other companies, they did put D-pads in, but they didn't put one in like Nintendo did.
So design them differently.
Right. You notice Sony have 4 separate buttons, even though they're connected together. But they kind of feel separate at the same time. That's intentional.
It's kind of like
not
the
wrath of
the Nintendo PlayStation, where they just removed the space. And it's
I mean, it was still the Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah, I got you. But back to this game. Eric, what'd you think?
It looks pretty cool. I've never been the biggest Suikoden person. I enjoyed the games when I played them. I kind of thought the localization was a bit silly with the extreme amount of exclamation marks they constantly use in their dialogue, which I think it's pretty much a demand that needs to be in the spiritual successor, because it will not feel like a Suikoden game if you do not have the over-the-top written dialogue in it. But aesthetically, it looks beautiful. It looks like they got all the right people behind it. It really looks like a passion project. It doesn't look like it's I guess I'll compare everything to Mighty Number 9.
Oh, yeah.
Something about that didn't feel right because he just immediately started off trying to make it a franchise.
Right.
But this one here, it looks like they just want to make another good game. Like together, it doesn't seem like there's ulterior motive to it. Everyone from the commercial alone, it looks like everyone's happy to be back together to play it. So I'm on terms of it being a passion project, I'm looking forward to it. And in terms of the combat looks just it looks stellar. It kind of makes me think that like what would Breath of Fire be like if it was more modern and kept the sprites. That's kind of what I see when I see that. And it does look like an evolution of Suikoden 1 and 2.
Sure.
In particular, it looks like they're taking that to a big extreme step. But that's a good thing. And yeah, like I said, the art style and it wowed me similar to how like Octopath Traveler wowed me when that first got announced. What I thought about the game is a different topic, but
yeah,
this game looks like it holds a lot of promise. I think if you're a big Suikoden fan, I think it's something you definitely need to keep your eyes on and follow.
Yeah, Stan, where are you sitting with this game?
I think it looks impressive from what they've shown so far. Pretty much in agreement with the Octopath Traveler look to it. It looks like a cross between Suikoden and Octopath Traveler, like kind of like detailed. Octopath. Yeah, like Octopath Traveler's design in like the environments, kind of, but then the sprites are larger and very Suikoden style, like reminiscent of those first two Suikoden games, like was mentioned before. So I haven't backed it, though. I'm like every day, like teetering, like thinking
Stan, it
about
won't
it.
get made without your support.
I mean, well,
it's there, yeah.
They already have $2.6 million, but
well,
if this game does not come to Switch, you know who to blame. Blame Stan.
There is that possibility. Actually, they did kind of reference a little bit of that, but yeah,
that was another thing. Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah, that was another thing on their Kickstarter. It was very encouraging that they were very detailed and realistic about their plans, and also they identified certain pitfalls that they're looking to avoid because they have learned from past Kickstarter games and
their own projects
presumably,
too, right? Their own careers.
Presumably, one of those was the Bloodstained game from Koji Igarashi, because I know that game had all kinds of problems with the Switch port.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they didn't commit to a Switch port for this game yet. Instead, they mentioned Nintendo's next gen system, whatever that might be. They don't know what it is, obviously, and they don't even know if that system will be ready by the time that this game is ready to come out. But they said that they're planning for that rather than the Switch, because I guess it would be they think so anyway. It'll be easier to port to that system whenever it comes out, which is kind of a big assumption, but they probably know more about that sort of thing than we do. So
I think in Bloodstained, regards to that, I think a different company ported the Switch version. Like when the Kickstarter first came out, it was 2015 for Bloodstained. And that's when the Wii U was still kind of relevant. And the Switch didn't come out till 2017.
Yeah.
So down the line, they had to cancel the Wii U version, and they brought the Switch version. So I think there was a lot of complications in that process, and the game wasn't really built up for the Switch in mind. So when they created it or handed it to the company to do it, they had to make a lot of compromises, which is why you see it the way it is. Now, granted, I've seen it. And it's much better.
It is much better. Yeah.
And its release. But if you're like wanting to play like the best version you possibly can, it's definitely not the Switch version.
Well, you could say that for like any game that's multi-platform release, right? Like the Switch version is not really the optimal version. But
Well-
there were so many things wrong with the Switch port. Like there were game breaking bugs in patches, later patches. There were game breaking bugs even when it was initially released. The game looked muddy and hideous. There were a lot of loading time problems. Again, some of that's optimization, but
Well, the biggest issue is the frame rate, right?
yeah, frame rate was a big problem. I mean, it's not your 60 like I think the other consoles have,
Right.
but it's not even 30, and even then it's kind of variable.
Yeah, the leopard end, that's pretty much exactly what you said. I'm usually more tolerant if like the Switch version is just like a medium setting to a game's high setting to a console's high setting. Bloodstained though is just like, it was to the point that like the aesthetics looked so different, and like it was just like you had to be really really into the idea of a portable version of the game, because if you were going to get that and be in a like just for the console version and you have options beyond that, yeah,
Not the one to go for.
Well, guys, I think this will be a excellent thing to continue talking about on our next part. But
You're getting a little ahead of ourselves, yeah.
yeah, but back to Eiyuden, I did have one thing that I wanted to bring up here about this game here, is that I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it looks amazing. But I think that I just laugh a little bit when I because this game has gotten so much hype. It's been trending on Twitter. It's been trending on YouTube. I've seen YouTube pages that don't even do news and they're making videos, right? Or like they do Western RPGs and they're making videos about this game. And it's just really hit the pulse with a lot of people. And part of that, I kind of chuckled to myself because this was well intended to do this. This was well crafted to do this, because if you look at the game, you see this all the time where a game comes out, they have like a well-known name attached to it for crowdfunding, and then they'll have like a really low goal that it'll absolutely hit really quick. And then all of a sudden they do that so that people start writing these articles like, oh, fully funded in less than 24 hours. And it's like, there's no way the base game was going to cost $500,000 to make. Like, this game is going to cost way more than that. But they just knew that, like, to do that, they would get enough coverage. It's like free press. Everyone's making videos about your game, and for good reason. I mean, this is a big deal. You should be excited about it. It's got all these veteran people working on it. But if you think about it, I mean, they're boasting now 106 characters that are going to be in this game. That's crazy. And they have to design animations for all those characters. I think this is going to be well above $2.5 million. And I mean, they already they're already talking to publishers before they even put this thing on Kickstarter. They already had like footage and stuff, which is great. Makes me want to support it. But
let me ask, how many characters did Suikoden 1 and 2 have?
A lot.
108 playable characters, which that's like part of the theme of the game, the 108 Stars of Destiny or something. I'm not a Suikoden expert, so I don't know exactly.
Wait a minute. You came off like a Suikoden expert.
Oh, did I really?
You just had that number right off the top of your head and
just
ready to go.
On their Kickstarter, under the facts, it does say one of the questions is, will there be 108 characters? And
Gotcha.
So I figured, I was like, that's probably the Suikoden number, but their response was, well, maybe, but right now it has 105, and that's a lot. So, like, who's going to, honestly, there's very few people that are going to play all 105. But
I will cancel my backing if they don't have 108 now.
Yeah, I mean,
just cancel it.
I mean, it's dude, they have different segments, but like on the like goals, right? They have different tiers. If you notice, a lot of the goals will be like $10,000 higher, and you get another character. And I've seen that with different bonus characters. So that tells me that for each new character, it costs at least $10,000 to do, the animations, possibly more. They might just be matching it, with extra money elsewhere, because I know that they have financial backing besides this. But so 106 characters, that's well over $1 million in money, because they have to, all skill animations, running animations. They got to create stories for all these different characters. I mean, that's a lot of money. So, and this game's more detailed than Octopath Traveler.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like they're actually trying to make the characters talk to each other.
Like, is that what was missing in Octopath Traveler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One vital part of having party members is communicating with each other.
Imagine if that game had gone to crowdfunding, right? And that was a component. We'll talk to each other. You know,
Dang, didn't reach that goal.
yeah, didn't reach it. I didn't think that had to be a goal, but this game has like 19 people working on it too from the trailer. There's no way $500,000. Anyways, so that just kind of like I just laugh whenever I see these like super low goals for these games that are going to cost way more than that, because I'm like, dude, you guys are buying into it. But
You know what's a goal they should have done?
what's that?
They should have been like, if you do this $5,000 tier, you'll be one of those 3 last characters to get the 108. We'll base this character off you, or something like that. That would have been so easy, and I'm guarantee you someone would have done it.
Are you shelling out money for that?
I ain't shelling that money for that. What I am saying is someone will.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, right.
Create an NPC based on them or something like that, or a playable character. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But then that person might want royalties or something.
Well,
It's got to be contract, right?
Yeah.
There was a reward tier to put your cat in the game. You can take a picture of your cat and send it to them, and they'll make a sprite version of your cat and put them in there with the name of whatever your cat's name is, so that you can recognize it in the game. There was like only 10 slots for that, and it was like, I don't know. I want to say it was like over $1,000. I don't remember, but I was just looking through.
That makes
I was
me
like, who's gonna buy that? Somebody will, but
that makes me want to get like a 3-legged cat or something.
Just a random picture.
Yeah, be like, that's my cat. It's got 2 legs. I don't know.
yeah.
Or like a thunder cat or something. I don't know.
Yes. Have Lionel out there. Lionel.
This is Thundercats. Whoa.
Wait, okay, here it is. Yeah, your cat in the game.
That's
That tier is $1,400,
nope. Nope.
and 10 people backed it. It's no longer available. So sorry, 10 people are getting their cat in the
They
game.
can't have this place overrun with cats. Yeah.
Yeah,
so one of my cats has a clipped half ear. Like, will they make will they make like a black cat that has like only half of one of their ears?
Of course.
For $1,400, yeah. I don't see why not.
They better take that half year off.
Yeah, for $1,350. I mean, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, so I just want to point that out. But dude, I gotta be honest, guys. I think that it's possible that I might not like this game still. Even though,
Why is that?
well, I like games with like a tight knit cast, and games that have 105 characters. I just feel like the story is not going to be. That's going to water down the story because they have to create like multiple endings, and like certain characters are going to be better than others, and it's going to stress me out while I'm playing it. You know.
We could then kind of focus on like a main cast, and like all the other ones are just like.
Yeah, they help you build out your castle and stuff. But they have little like roles in the world and stuff like that if you recruit them. I mean, if there's anybody that can do it, it's this guy. Because I liked how they did it in Suikoden. It's just, I imagine that my thoughts on this game when it does come out, I don't want to judge it too early, but I'm going to anyways, is that it's going to be very similar to Octopath. It's going to have a great art aesthetic. It's going to have great music, great combat, and I'm not going to like the story.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be excited about it till it comes out anyways. So
I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons to play RPGs, right? Are the kind of the narrative. So
yeah.
Who knows? Who knows at this point?
Yeah.
It's too early to tell.
Yeah, for sure. But moving on from that, because you guys were really jumping in with the Bloodstained stuff, which ties into our next stuff, which is perfect. But many of these games that we're going to talk about here at this point, we got a nice little list here. So there's a lot of games that are developed in a similar fashion here with series developers that are well known or well established. And one of them we were bringing up was the creator of the Castlevania series, right? We worked on Bloodstained. And there are some other games we're going to bring up here as well that are relevant to this discussion. So we've had a revival of Shenmue 3, and then Mighty Number 9, which was created by the creator of Mega Man, I believe, right? And then involved with someone well known. And then we had from Obsidian, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, which was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate, but that kind of falls under the known quantity here. And so I'm going to go through some of the Metacritic scores of these games. So Mighty Number 9, Metascore of 52 and an average score of 3.6. It's a 2D. It's a 2D platformer with 3D models. It was criticized for having frame rate problems, muddy graphics, tedious levels, but it does have a cult following of fans. Shenmue 3, Metacritic score of 67, user score of 7.8. It's an action-adventure game set in Japan. That was a sequel to a series that started on the Sega Dreamcast. Criticized as having dated gameplay, making navigation difficult, and really only appealing to hardcore Shenmue fans. Bloodstain actually... Go ahead. You can interrupt.
Oh, no, I was just saying that pretty much nails it. Shenmue 3 is a good game if you love Shenmue 1 and 2. But you'll really hate the ending of 3 because you've been waiting nearly 20 years for this third game, and then they're all like, spoiler for 2 seconds. You can go la 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 like this if you like for 10 seconds.
Oh, Eric, you got to do this. Okay.
There's going to be a Shenmue 4 because they didn't end the story in 3 after it took 20 years to finish it, and then you can make a different story in Shenmue 4.
Why end it with 3 when you can have number 4? All right.
Now 4 will never come out.
All right. Well, we're good now. We can if you were la 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 and with your fingers in your ears, you're good now.
I'll go back.
I gave you a thumbs up. All right. So Shenmue, he had a Metascore 67, score 78, user score 7.8. Bloodstain actually scored the highest of these with, besides Pillars of Eternity, second highest. But it's a 2D platforming RPG, and it had a Metacritic score of 83 and a user score of 8.4. But I think a lot of those user scores was due to the issues we were talking about earlier at launch that some of it's been resolved, some of it hasn't. And then Pillars of Eternity from Obsidian, it's a spiritual successor to the Baldur's Gate series. It's a computer RPG. Praised for story and gameplay but criticized for having a dated art style, but it had a Metacritic score of 89 and user score of 8.3. The sequel was similarly scored. So I guess this kind of begs the question, because a lot of these games were not very well received among the fans. They're kind of mediocre, and some of them outright hated it, like Mighty Number 9. But why do you guys think that when these games are crowdfunded and they're being developed by these well-known entities, these well-known individuals, why are they reviewing poorly? Why are they not meeting fan expectations? Why do you guys think that is?
Well, you said it yourself, right? Like you said, $2.6 million is not enough,
right,
to make this game. It goes, and that's a really, really high number, right?
Yeah.
So for these other games, if $1 million, if they get $1 million, is that enough? Is that enough to do what they want to do? So some of it comes to money, and a lot of it, I think, comes to expectations as well. But there's some quality that's missing for some of these. And one other game you didn't mention, Wonderful 101.
Oh yeah.
And I feel that was probably, of all of them, the most scummy, in my opinion, because they already have their platinum games, right? They don't need Kickstarter. The game was potentially, I think, already made. This was almost, I don't know. I don't know what you guys thought of that whole situation. But I feel like the game was already made, and they're reaching out for Kickstarter for whatever. I don't even know why. And the game was okay. It wasn't one of those games where people were just disgusted by it. But
Platinum usually has a publisher above them. Their games out. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they self-publish Wonderful 101?
Well, I'm not sure if they self-published it or even if Nintendo published it after the fact, or maybe it was before the fact when it was the initial release.
I think they didn't go through Nintendo. I remember because I just watched that interview on
Okay.
Gaming Plane, and they mentioned that portions of the game where they had a Nintendo logo, they had to put something else over it, similar to Banjo-Kazooie had to put Microsoft over Nintendo.
Oh boy,
And
that's so. I guess I mean I get it, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I felt like of them all, that was probably the most kind of the most disappointing. Yes, Bloodstain had some issues. I had a lot of delays initially with Bloodstained. Mighty Number 9, just man, that game just fell from the tree and hit every branch coming down.
It just wasn't very good.
Oh man, that game never stood a chance.
I looked at that man in the face and I shook his hand.
Did you really? By accident? By accident?
No, that was around the time where we were still hopeful that the game was going to be good.
He's probably like in his inner dialogue, just like, oh my God, I got to get away. This is a mistake. Yeah. I think you're right though, Gio, that like a big part of it, in addition to not being funded enough, is the expectations though, because like these people have created these personas that are built on an entire studio. And we like to act like, for example, like Hironobu Sakaguchi, he's the creator of Final Fantasy, and he doesn't need that studio. We just need him. And it's like, well, I
don't know about that.
Yeah, he's definitely talented, but he also, like, I'm sorry, when you have a gigantic budget, and then you also have, like, let's not even talk about the admin people that are at a company, like the recruiters that are out there pulling in the most talented developers to work for you. And they have an incentive to bust their butt because they can see a career path. They can see people that like worked at the company for 20 years and now they're getting to make their own game, right? And so when they're crowdfunding, they're having to like find people that are willing to work for less money, you know, or they're having to reach out to like third-party developers and like build contracts with them. And if it's not quite what they want, like they have a limited budget, so they just kind of got to take it, you know, or, you know, or try to get more money. So it's just, you know, people expect them to be able to make these giant games that they made when they had much more financial backing. And that's just not what it is. And also, I mean, with Bloodstain, I had a great time with it on the PS4. I didn't play it on Switch, but I mean, every review you read about that game, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is what it's compared to, which is largely considered one of the greatest action platformers of all time. You know, so, you know, is that really fair that like whatever you create is going to be compared to like what some people consider like the pinnacle of the genre, you know, whereas, you know, other people don't have to contend with that. So it's just, I think it's just really, really hard. Stan, what do you got? Or Eric, either one.
I have an unpopular opinion.
What's that?
I think these groups lack a publisher influence.
Oh boy.
And I say that because, yeah, people like higher ups at Konami are pretty scummy and they create hostile work conditions and stuff. No doubt about that. A good publishing company, though, will help keep your game in line, make sure it's good, make sure it gets out at a reasonable time, and will make sure you have the resources you need to get it done and find the right talent for it. When you start up these things, you lack almost all of it. For how good Bloodstained still was, it did not have someone like a Capcom or a Konami or dare I say a Square Enix to come in and say, okay, no, this is bad. You need to go through this again. Because I can tell you this Mighty Number 9 could have really used some publisher influence.
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I think that's a great opinion. Yeah. You know, with the Kickstarter, they have a little more, I guess, imaginary, some freedom with what they want to do. But when you have like those higher ups, right? Like they have whatever they have in mind, and they kind of want you to do it. So I mean, I think it helps. I think it definitely does help.
Well, and not to mention, if it doesn't, in that scenario, if the game doesn't go well, we don't blame the person that made the game. We blame the scummy influence, that's for all the problems. And if they were only free to do what they want, we would have had a fantastic game, right?
Yeah, like even someone like Koji Igarashi, I love the guy, but he doesn't have much experience with dealing with the publisher level stuff or the executive producer level stuff. And he may have done some for some Castlevania games in the past, but you pretty much have the man on his own, and he's only getting a smaller time publishing company coming in and just helping fund the game. I don't know if they're really helping manage the game to make it get out in a good time, usually like someone like Capcom would. So I think a lot of it comes down to that also. And they build this ideal roadmap all the time. Like everything looks great. Like it looks like they have everything in line. And then 5 years later, when they were supposed to come out in 2 years or so, and they're like, well, this happened. We fell out with this publisher. Now we're joining together with this publisher. Or, oh, this engine's not working. We have to convert it. Or we have to completely cancel a version because they don't make games on this. Or like Vita and Wii U. And
yeah.
I mean, it's some disastrous stuff. And if you have someone like higher up and really experienced backing you up and making sure that like they're up to date on this stuff, and it makes game development much smoother.
Imagine if Tetsuya Nomura was crowdfunding a game. That thing would never come out.
No.
Like it would just be like 15 years. Because you're like, well, what if we made it a musical? What if it'd just be just going crazy, But one
it's crazy. I'm on the 5th team of people, and I don't know why the last 4 left me.
Right. One thing that I also wonder though is many of these like big name people, I don't know if they've really been this intimately involved with the game in the similar fashion that they are when they're crowdfunding a game, where they're like literally on the floor, like intimately involved with every aspect of the game. Whereas where they were at before in the position when they were with a company, they were kind of like very high up on the food chain, and they had people under them that would kind of take care of stuff, and they would just get like weekly updates, and they might kind of jump in here and there, but they weren't, involved in this of an intimate way in a very long time. And the reason I say that is because a lot of these games, when they come out, they get criticized for feeling like really dated with their mechanics, right? And it's almost like it's like a PlayStation 2 game, but released like Shenmue 3, for example, like it was criticized as feeling like it was a Sega Dreamcast game, which is fine for Shenmue 1 and 2, but
right.
not for a game that comes out today, right? So
it feels like a Dreamcast game that's playing on an early part of the 360 era.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I think that has to be another component, is just, you're not used to being that involved, or you're not that up to date with stuff. Like if Sakaguchi, I always go back to Sakaguchi because he's a big name, creator of Final Fantasy. If he were to get intimately involved with an RPG, like a big RPG, like I guarantee you that thing would be like, it would be turn-based. You'd have like a little bar that loads, if it was like a 3D game. I mean, like the guy has not been that and like intimately involved. He's more been like a scenario and concept guy for the last 15 years than he's actually been a, let me be on the ground floor. Let me talk with the programmers type of guy. And, I think that's just a reality. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. In regards to expectations, I think you guys nailed it also. In general, it's a different thing once you're putting money down, right? Once you're backing something. It's not like, I mean, I think this even affects like pre-orders. If you pre-order something and you're putting money down, suddenly you're invested in it, and so you're expecting more, right? And so that might be a reason why, at least on these list of games that Hat went through, Shenmue, Mighty Number 9, Bloodstained, and Pillars of Eternity, that the user score is lower than the critic score in a lot of them. Not all of them, but and none of them are over like I think 8.4 is the highest one, right?
Well, we had Pillars of Eternity, but that was
yeah. The user score for that one says 8.3.
Oh, was it that low? I thought it was a little bit higher than that. Let me go back to here. Yeah, user score is 8.3. That's a good point. And critically, it was very well received. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the issue is, like you mentioned earlier, the game is going to be compared to not like games on its budget, right, today. It's going to be compared to the cult classic, lightning in a bottle, greatest game of its genre that it's being inspired from, right?
Right.
Which is kind of the same thing as like what was that Tokyo RPG Factory, their first game?
I Am Setsuna.
Setsuna, yeah.
The Chrono Trigger killer.
Yes, one of the things in their marketing, and that wasn't a Kickstarter game. That was just a new game studio's like first game, and the marketing for it was basically like, this game is inspired from Chrono Trigger. Well, all of a sudden now everybody's comparing it to Chrono Trigger, which was like I said, like a lightning in a bottle, like maybe the greatest turn-based RPG ever made, in many people's mind, right? And like, why would you want that kind of comparison? So like this Eiyuden Chronicle is the same thing. It's inevitably going to be compared to Suikoden,
which is not good.
Not just any Suikoden, probably Suikoden 2, because that's the one that its art style looks most similar to, right? Its characters and such. But so anybody who backs this game, and then if the game turns out worse than Suikoden 2 or worse than their memory of Suikoden 2, right, which is another very difficult thing to overcome, they're not going to score the game well. They're going to give it like a 7, right, in their mind.
Yeah,
right?
Matt.
Now maybe they're older. As people get older, they can get a little more rational and understand like what we're talking about here, right? Like this game, by today's standards, even with $2.6 million, is probably going to have a much lower budget than Suikoden 2 did comparatively.
That's not enough to port it to all these consoles too.
Yeah, so like there's and like Eric mentioned, there's no big publisher involved, kind of with it's hard to explain. Like you need a lightning in a bottle situation. I was
just going to say, can you imagine, right? You have this black cat, half his ears missing, and you paid for it to be put in this terrible game. Can you imagine that feeling? I couldn't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Having my cat immortalized in a game that's just not good.
I hope it wasn't good. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
What if it was an NPC based on you, right? And then instead, like we were talking about before, and they put you in the game and you hated it, right?
No good.
But Stan, like it's a good point too, because not only are you combating a legend of a game, you're also combating people's memory. And I've seen people that have gone back to play Suikoden 2 that said it's still a good game. It's just not as good as they remembered it, right? So even Suikoden 2 didn't live up to Suikoden 2.
upon retrospect, right?
Yeah, so it's just like this game's kind of doomed in that regard. But I'm sure there's going to be lots of people that really like it, and it might be good in its own right. But
the one thing they definitely need to take into account is the game should feel like a Suikoden game for sure, because that's what you're selling, obviously. But you've got to not be so cling to the past. You need to look at Suikoden 1 and 2 and be like, okay, what worked really well, what didn't work, and what can we do to improve upon and make it better what did work, and what new can we add to it on top of that won't impede on the experience that people are expecting from it.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Unfortunately, a lot of developers are clinging too much to the past, and because of that, their games feel too much like they were back then. And a lot of times they don't want to evolve they don't want to try to evolve the genre. They're trying too hard to give you exactly what you expect. And I think in that regard, I think you need to just give something a little new on top of it. Not enough that it will completely change the game,
Right.
and what you're pretty much putting your money towards, but you know, like something that you'll remember it 10 years from now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and this kind of ties into the next question I want to ask here, but well, I'll just go ahead and say that and I'll give this response here. But I was going to ask, what RPG series or developer do you think crowdfunding would be a good fit for in the future? And one thing that kind of ties in with that occurred to me here was sometimes it's like Eric says, they're too tied to the past. And then I think there's other people that like, it just shows like they don't really get why what they made appeals to people in the past. It sounds weird, but like when you look at Yoshinori Kitase, who directed Final Fantasy VI, when you hear him talk about Final Fantasy VI, to him, because he was creating the game, because he was involved in the creation process, he views it as a very different lens. And all he ever talks about is he just wishes they had modern capabilities to tell the story in like in current day technology, because only then would they be able to really tell the story they really wanted to tell, right? And you know, most people that enjoy Final Fantasy VI, they look back and they're like, "No, what are you talking about? The thing's amazing." Right? So it's like,
Yeah.
but he doesn't think of it that way, because he's just thinking of all those nights where it's like, crap, how much space is left on the cartridge? Crap. All right, let's make the town a little bit smaller. Okay. You know, he's thinking about stuff like that. And so when we think about what RPG series or developer do you think crowdfunding would be a good fit for in the future? What do you guys think? Who do you want to see resort to crowdfunding for a game into the future? For a game in the future?
It's kind of hard to say because, you know, I would obviously want to see the people who made Breath of Fire
Yeah,
make
cool.
another game akin to like Breath of Fire 3 and 4.
Yeah.
But Capcom has been on this, we want to make what the fans want type of deal right now. So I'm kind of being hopeful that they look, you know, steer their eyes towards their RPG games. Games like Mega Man Legends and Breath of Fire series, stuff like that. And they should be like, you know, hey, why don't we actually like put a game like that on the Switch that, you know, people have been asking for years. We don't need it to be high budget, just need it to be that. But if Capcom wasn't looking at it like that, though, I would want the people to kickstart their own company to make a Breath of Fire like game.
Yeah, that could be really cool.
Call it Whoosh of Ice or something. I don't know.
Fire breath. Yeah.
I was kind of just looking back. I'm like, all right, Konami's basically just given up on all of their RPGs, right? And they don't really have that many, to be honest with you. So I was looking back. They have the Suikoden series. They have some Castlevania games are there as well. And I was looking at Vandal Hearts. I'm not too much of a fan of Vandal Hearts, but I mean, I'm just looking back and just because I want to be right in my guess, you know. But there really is nothing else there because, like I said, Konami. Anyway, I was thinking Wild Arms. I'd like to see that come back, and whether or not it's by the creators of Wild Arms, but something kind of the spiritual successor of Wild Arms, because I love the setting. I'm kind of these high fantasy type of games. I think I've had enough of them, to be honest with you. So I think something like Wild Arms, kind of set in the Wild Wild West, turn-based style is fine. So I think that's kind of what I would like to see.
I'm with you, man. I love the Wild West theme. So if another RPG like that comes out, I'm game.
Yeah. So again, just freshen things up. It's just we see the same things kind of over and over. Right now, it's like the cyberpunk thing is really in it with a lot of these indie games. So you're seeing a lot of cyberpunk type of games. I want to see Wild West come back.
That'd be cool. That'd be really, really cool. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I'm looking at it like, okay, what games, what series are basically very unlikely to have a new game come out, and I'm going back to the Shadow Hearts series because not only did the director and creator of the Shadow Hearts games, or one of the co-creators, he's been tweeting about what he wants to do with another Shadow Hearts game for like 10 years. And this guy's like been drawing pictures and stuff. Like he's got like plans, and he's been actively trying to get the games remastered. And he's been trying to, well, at least get them remastered and trying to get another game out there. But it's really complicated because the Shadow Hearts series is owned by a company that doesn't even make video games anymore. They make slot machines. And so they might own Shadow Hearts, but they probably don't even have the game anywhere. So, and they have no plan.
Owned by Midway, wasn't it, originally?
They published it, but it's been complicated because like the studio was sold, and it effectively right now it's a company that, like I said, makes slot machines. So it's kind of grim because it makes you wonder why they don't want to sell the game if they're not, like, they literally have no idea to do anything with it. But he's trying to do something with it. But he actually did an interview where he talked about crowdfunding, and people were wanting him to fund an RPG in the Shadow Hearts style because it has a very unique theme to it for an RPG. It's a horror RPG, which is not something that you really see. And the first game in the series was actually rated M because of all the just mature content in the game. It was very bloody and gory, and there's a lot of sexual jokes and stuff in there that were not very kid friendly. And Midway actually pulled it in the Western Shores after the first shipment. So that first one's actually pretty valuable if you own it. But he was doing an interview about this, and he said, like, he was like, I know people want another Shadow Hearts game, but I don't think that people would want me to make a game that's not Shadow Hearts. And I thought that was interesting that he had that kind of knowledge. Like, yeah, I know they want another Shadow Hearts game. I want one too, but I don't think they want me to just make another RPG that's not Shadow Hearts. And I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but I would like to see him do that because he's definitely got a unique style.
You should just make a deal with them. Be like, hey, if this new Shadow Hearts game is good, I'll let you guys make a slot machine.
or
it's a ring based. Yeah, it's got judgments.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Are you cool with it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because you want them to create another game in a series if they're crowdfunding, but if they're doing it independently, they can't have that name, right? So it has to be like Bloodstained, where it's basically a Castlevania game, but they have to change like the names of everything, right? And call it something different. So
yeah, it's sad seeing these like dormant IPs being held by people not doing anything with them anymore. And I'm with you. I just wish that like the original creator of it are just able to snatch it away one day. But
yeah, for sure. Stan, what do you got?
Well, it's not very realistic, but I wish that Yasumi Matsuno would dip into crowdfunding to revive.
Dude, you're asking him to come out of retirement.
Well, no, he recently collaborated with Square Enix on Final Fantasy 14.
He did like a little thing with 14, and that was like the only thing he did for like 12 years.
Yeah, well, basically,
you're crushing his dreams. Let him say it.
Go ahead, Stan. I'm sorry.
Well, he basically hasn't been like a director, or as far as I'm aware, like in charge of a major project since Final Fantasy 12. And even then he had to step away. So even that game is only like partially his story or his vision, right? We don't know how it would have turned out if he was there the whole time. So, and then since then he's just kind of been doing writing or like consulting. Like he came back to do like the Tactics Ogre re-release on PSP.
He was involved with the Zodiac Age as well, right?
Yeah. So he's just come back to kind of polish up ports or remasters of his original projects, but he hasn't really had
Does he still
an opportunity to.
Does he still work at Square Enix, or is he gone independent? Or are we doing?
I don't know if he works there, but he has been involved like the last year or two with the FF14 team and Yoshi P, like working with him on some of the expansion stuff. So I don't know. We were speculating and secretly hoping that he would have a big role in Final Fantasy 16, maybe. But that was all speculation. We don't actually know if that's a dream. So in the world where that's not possible, I'd like to have him try to kickstart something that is lower budget, but like he has full creative control over the story and the characters and everything, because that's really where he shines with like Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story, for example. So I would be,
or the first 6 hours of Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah. So I would be really excited if he was like the creative lead on a Final Fantasy Tactics in name only type of thing, or a Vagrant Story, like it's supposed to be Vagrant Story, but due to IP reasons, right, they had to call it something else.
Hobo Tale.
But you look at it and you're like, oh, that's Vagrant Story. You know, like that kind of
a
project.
Spiritual successor to Vagrant Story would be really awesome.
Yeah.
I've said it on here before. I'll say it again, just in case some Square Enix employee is bored and he's looking at this podcast, or Matsuno may happen to see it.
This might be their favorite podcast. You shouldn't shout us down like that.
Vagrant Story 2, but make it so it has Dark Souls-like combat, but still have the exploration factors of the first Vagrant Story and the storyline structure.
With more save points.
With more save points.
Please.
Yeah, the gameplay definitely needs to be modernized in some way if you're gonna do a Vagrant Story, like you said, spiritual successor of some kind. But Matsuno being in charge, essentially, or having full creative control of his own project, I think would be the big drawing point of anything, a Vagrant Story or a Final Fantasy Tactics or something coming back.
See, this is like the type of thing where I think like he has to be in charge of the story, and that's it. Yes. Because like I feel like this is an example of somebody that's probably been out of the game too long with like actual development, to where if he were to make an RPG and like be like directly in charge of everything, I could see it being like Final Fantasy Tactics, and it would have like 45-minute battles, and like people be like, dude, this was okay back in like 1998, but in 2020, I'm not feeling these 45-minute battles, you know?
Oh, man.
To do.
Yeah.
Stan, I got bad news for you. It just clicked in my head right now. Don't know why I didn't remember till now.
He's not dead, is he?
No, he's not dead. But he has
health concerns.
Tried to do a Kickstarter already in the past.
He did one for
Story.
What was it called, Eric?
Unsung Story.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but from what I understand, that Kickstarter has turmoil, and then like the people who originally started it couldn't fulfill the request, and so it was bought by another publisher. Like they bought the rights to everything they had created so far. So it's really unclear.
They've just now started showing gameplay of it.
Yeah, it's supposed to come out in the fall, but it's really unclear how much influence of Matsuno's is still left, right? Like in the project as it came over.
From what I saw, it's still inspired in broad strokes.
Yeah.
Like I think it's still like the story structure.
Yeah.
It's still his, but obviously they didn't get a writer who will probably like fulfill his vision.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know, maybe that'll turn out great. Who knows? But
from what I see, from what they're making Little Orbit, the environments look really good.
Yeah.
But the characters don't necessarily look bad, but they look super generic.
They don't look like Final Fantasy Tactics art style characters, yeah. So
no, I'd be fine with like something completely different looking. It's just that they don't look unique in any way at all. It's like they got the Battle Chasers like environment thrown in with like low polygon looking generic characters. It's like I think they just needed a better character artist for this game. But besides that, it looks decent. Looks much better than I expected.
Yeah, we'll
But
see.
I guess if Matsuno got to try again, but had a stronger backing and better preparation this time, then yeah, definitely something like Vagrant Story 2-ish.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be really cool for sure. Let's go ahead and move on here, guys. That way we can get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight. So let's look at some crowdfunded RPGs that were not created by well-known industry developers. We're going to go through a few here, similar to how we just went through some well-known developer-made RPGs that were crowdfunded. So we have, first off, Undertale, which received a Metascore of 92 and a user score of 8.4. Praise for applying a new take on the RPG formula. Toby Fox, the creator, he had to move because people kept coming to his house. People are that big a fan, right? Hyper Light Drifter, Metascore of 88, user score 7.9. Praise for having a visually captivating art aesthetic and soundtrack, but the abstract storytelling was kind of a hit or miss with some people. Crosscode, 40-hour action RPG with 16-bit graphics, modern lighting and animations. Metascore of 84 and user score of 8.5. So that's very high for what we've seen so far. Kingdom Come Deliverance, which was a historically accurate open world RPG set in 15th century Bohemia. And it's got a Metascore of 76, user score of 8.0, but I think that's a little skewed because I know now people are really into it. It's got a steep learning curve. It's not Skyrim. I mean, you start off and you have to learn how to walk. I mean, it's like literally like everything you can think of. I exaggerate a little bit with walking, but literally like you have to learn how to like read, and you suck at using a sword, and like just you die over and over and over again until you can, figure it out. But once people beat it, apparently it's a really good game. And it had some patching issues too. But Shadows of Adam, it's a SNES styled JRPG with turn-based combat, really influenced by SNES era Final Fantasy. And that had a Metascore of 78 and a user score of 7.7. Cosmic Star Heroine, similar art style to Crosscode, very influenced by Chrono Trigger and Phantasy Star, Metascore of 78 and user score of 7.6. And then Indivisible action RPG platformer, Metascore of 77, user score of 6.8. Not very good on that one. But I mean, these games are generally a little bit better received, at least critically. It's still kind of hit or miss with the user score, but it is definitely a step higher than some of the more developer-based RPGs and games, because those games were hitting like 5s like regularly, right? So, I mean, these games are all like high 7s, early 8s, and critically, a lot of them are hitting 9s, especially Undertale. That game has just been crushing it. And for a budget of only $51,000, I mean, it's that's paid Toby Fox over multiple times. He's a millionaire at this point. But why do you think these projects seem to fare a little bit better in reception on average than the known developer games? What do you guys think? Or do you think it's the same?
They're passion projects. They're clearly inspired from great games in the past, but at the same time, they still go in their own direction. What they want with it, like Undertale is very Earthbound inspired,
right?
But it's not an Earthbound game. But like when you play it, you feel the similarities in some regard in terms of its tone and like some of its comedic humor and stuff like that. But they still successfully made their own thing out of the inspiration that it comes from, and it did a spectacular job with it. And I feel like these other games, for better or worse, had some inspiration and passion behind it, and they just ended up being good games.
Yeah,
and I don't think there is a high level expectancy of what has to be in your game or not in your game either.
Yeah, some of the same reasons why we said that they can fail and then not be good, like expectations, are the same reasons why I think they succeed, is their expectations are set lower, and they generally are better games. I would have to say they have more freedom. They're not under the thumb of these bigger corporations. But again, it's kind of the same thing like we said with the other games, that the thumb is what really kind of motivated these guys to really do well. So I don't know. I think it's just a combination of all the things that can go in either way. It's the freedom, it's the expectations, and not necessarily the money. And that comes down to where maybe it's the passion behind it is more of the driving force, and that's where you see a little bit more creativity. Maybe that's kind of what it is. They're willing to take the risks a little bit more. If they're not succeed in a game like Suikoden 2 or whatever, they're willing to take a lot of these risks.
Yeah, I think you guys are really hitting it here. Is that I think the developer-based games, they're literally trying to recapture what they did in the past, right? That's why Bloodstain's constantly compared to Symphony of the Night. Whereas, like Eric brought up with Earthbound, Undertale, it's influenced by Earthbound, but it doesn't try to be Earthbound. It tries to make its own footprint, and therefore has its own unique feeling to it. And it honestly, especially with Undertale, it uses the expectations you have and throws those tropes against you and kind of makes you question what else are you just, taking for granted, and like, what's your real impact in the world around you? And I think that's kind of what these indie games tend to bring to the table that these well-known developers sometimes miss, is that there has to be something unique and new with the game. I mean, it's the same thing for Hyper Light Drifter. That game was masterminded by a guy who has a heart condition, and he was literally at a point where he could die any day, right? And just living with that constantly, not knowing if you're going to wake up. And he tried to incorporate that into the game itself and try to give people a glimpse of kind of what he's dealing with in a kind of a metaphysical way, right? And it's kind of abstract. Not everyone appreciated it, but it's definitely unique. It's nostalgic, but at the same time, it's like something you've never really experienced before, and I think that's probably part of the allure to it. Stan?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We just probably said everything you could possibly say.
I mean, yeah, they're good games for the first. That's the first thing, right? Because there are crowdfunded games that just kind of they come out and then they don't do as well, and generally it's because they weren't as good a game as these games we just listed, right? People remember the good games, and so that's the first thing, is they're well-made games. And then the second thing is, I think what you pointed out is that they have a uniqueness to them, but then at the same time, they remind people of something they really loved originally that doesn't really fit into like a AAA game design anymore, like Earthbound and Undertale, like you mentioned, right? Undertale is not Earthbound, but it's very inspired by it in some ways, and other games. That's not the only influence on it, obviously, but it's its own thing. But it's also very reminiscent of games from the past, like well-designed games from the past, and it kind of incorporates that, but then also does something unique with it, so that it's not. Yeah, same thing with like even like a more expensive game like Kingdom Come Deliverance, right? It's a first-person fantasy style game, but it's well,
it's historical, so no dragons, no magic, nothing like that.
Yeah, it took realism and just like ran as far as it could with it, right? And that's not something that a lot of games do, So
it's a unique experience,
yeah. And so some people are like, oh wow, like they really value that because of how different it is, or they haven't really played a video game that was like making realism, I guess, like that big of a goal for the experience, and so that gels with a lot of people. And with a lot of other people, that's like, no, they don't want that, right? But the people who do like that, they really like that, and those are more likely to be the people who create the kind of the niche audience for that type of game. So
yeah, it just occurred to me too, we're being a slightly, because there's another side of the coin here. that although the veteran-based crowdfunded games may be a little bit more dicey with the end product, I think those, if you put money towards them, they're more likely to come out because they just have experience working and getting games out under a budget, right? Whereas I guess we're kind of forgetting all the crowdfunded games that didn't come out, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Moment
think,
of silence for the forgotten games.
yeah, it's kind of hard to criticize the game when it doesn't even release. I mean, you can criticize it, but it's just, yeah.
They're so forgotten I can't even remember them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But interesting.
I will say one more thing. I
Sure.
think these games also know how to. It's a point I made before. It's they know how to draw from the past but modernize it at the same time. And I know this isn't the RPG, but Shovel Knight is like the perfect example.
Mhm.
It took a lot of elements that worked well in 8-bit NES games and made its own thing out of it. And at the same time, they looked back and said, okay, NES games are really fun back then, but people who play them today are not going to tolerate the frustrating elements that were in 8-bit games. So we need to find a way to create that sense of fun and challenge that you get from an 8-bit game, but not to a point that it's going to frustrate players. So they made it like a cool system where you collect the money in the game and you can buy stuff when you go to the hub areas. So, but if you die, half of, I think it was like half, I think it was half of your money gets like thrown into the air of where you died. And it kind of like Dark Souls, you can come back and try to reclaim it. And if you don't, or if you die again, it disappears. So it's kind of like a gamble thing. Do you really want to go back and get it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to just continue without trying to get it back, depending on the circumstance? So they made some pretty nice like compromises to give the challenge to the people who are willing to deal with the frustration and, you know, and the casual feeling also, if you just want to be like, oh, well, I don't want to try to get it back. I'm just going to keep continuing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's some cool modern compromises that they make with these games that I feel like the other developers don't really do.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Let's start looking towards the future here, and some RPGs that are crowdfunded right now that have not fully come out. A lot of them they're in a playable state, but they're not fully released yet. Is one of them's Kingdoms of the Dump, which that game looks amazing, by the way. It's just great pixel art, great humor. It's kind of got a little bit of a Western feel to it. So that game's yet to be announced, but it's currently at around $76K. Edge of Eternity, which is got graphics that kind of look like early PlayStation 3 or Wii U graphics, but it's very influenced by like Final Fantasy and Xenoblade Chronicles. It's kind of weird how it's mixed like that, but it's got Yasunori Mitsuda doing the music on it, which is really cool, from Chrono Trigger and Xenogears and all those great games. So I actually own a beta version of that game. They'll let you play up to certain chapters as they update it. It's pretty good, but it's dated. It's got like the characters' eyes and facial expressions are looking all over while they're talking. So
yes, and some of the cuts, because I played it too. Some of the cut scenes, like they do the same. Like you see several NPCs doing the same exact things.
Yeah.
Like almost in tandem, like they're dancing, like like doing the Thriller dance. It's really weird. Yeah, some of the animations I did notice are a little
off the wall.
Need work.
Yeah, well, it's weird with that particular game because originally that game was not going to look like that. It was going to be more like pixel artish, right? But they changed to a realistic look early on, and yeah, that's I still enjoyed what I played, but it's definitely not for everyone with the way it looks. But I think they're working on it. But another one is Sea of Stars that was announced recently by the crew that made The Messenger, and that game just looks amazing.
Keep my eye on that one.
Yeah, it looks very Chrono Trigger-esque.
I am a sucker for pixel art with dynamic lighting. You put those two together, and I am just all over it
Every time. Yeah, me too.
every time.
Yeah. It just looks so good. And then Chained Echoes, which is supposed to come out in 2021. That's got 170,000 towards it right now. And Gio, did you say you supported that one?
Yep, I did support that one. You're right. I think it's like the end, like quarter 2 or 3 of maybe even, I don't think 4 of 2021. Yeah, I did support that one.
So what type of game is it? Like
it's a turn-based RPG, no random battles. It's got mechs in it, so there's mech battles. It's got airships.
I've seen that game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got airships. So there's airship battles. You can customize your airship. You can customize your mech. A lot of customization, a lot of promises, and so far it's really good. It's just a single sole developer, along with a composer, Eddie M. I forget his last name. Really good music so far. The animations are looking really good. No dynamic lighting, but it just reminds me of a 16-bit RPG. One, like, it looks like a classic RPG, and it looks really, really good. I like the animations that they're doing with the combat, kind of the camera moves. He's just doing a really good job with it.
Yeah, it looks. From what I remember and I saw, it did look really, really good. So it's pretty cool that they have a release window too. So, well, of these and any other ones you guys want to bring up, is there anything in particular you guys are looking forward to? I guess Gio just kind of touched on Chained Echoes. And I know for me, Sea of Stars, we were just talking about that as well. That's probably the biggest one I'm looking forward to. Like, I'm going to definitely buy for sure, because that game just looks amazing. Like Gio said, with the pixel art and lighting effects, it's just so good. But is there anything else you guys want to kind of bring up here before we top off this topic?
No, I'm just with you. Sea of Stars all the way. I'm keeping my eyes on that one for sure.
Yeah. Stan?
Yeah, same. Lots to look forward to, and hope that they all turn out well. Eiyuden Chronicles and all the rest. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, this might be beating a dead horse, but it's on our outline, so I'm going to say it. Will we see the trend increase in the future with crowdfunded RPGs, or where do we see this going in the future? And I will just say that for me personally, crowdfunding, I feel that it's starting to become more professional with the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the appeal of crowdfunding used to be much more in the indie domain, where, you know, you had games like Undertale where it was literally like Toby Fox and another person, and they would get this game crowdfunded and they would get to make their dream game, and everyone would get to play it and talk about how awesome it is. And that's still possible now, but like when we start seeing the creator of Suikoden turning to crowdfunding, or we start seeing Platinum Games crowdfunding stuff, it's like the people that made Astral Chain. It's like it's turning into something else, you know, and these games are having budgets of millions of dollars. And I still like that that's happening. I still think that's cool. But when I think back to when I was a kid, if there was an indie game, it was like some guys in their garage, and they were just like doing it in the evenings in their spare time and their passion and sweat and just, you know, I'm afraid that eventually, you know, that segment is going to go away, because people are starting to get used to games that look like Sea of Stars, right? Where it's made by people with serious financial backing. And hopefully that doesn't go away. So that's what I would say to that part. But what about you guys?
I would say it really depends on the behavior of the publishers.
Yeah.
That what I've seen, a lot of these Kickstarter campaigns come from people who couldn't get their IP back off the ground with companies, you know, Konami most famous for that, and Capcom at the time wouldn't make any more Mega Man games. So, you know, these developers felt like there was an open market for a similar IP to come in and take its place. So I think it really depends on like where it's coming from. Seems like a case by case thing. So like, if you're working under Square Enix and they're still making your IP that you want to make, I don't see the real strong motive to go off and make like a spiritual successor, your own thing, unless you had like a grand idea and they're just not wanting to buy it. and you're so passionate about believing it will work that you're willing to quit the company and kickstart something. Something like Koji Igarashi with Bloodstain, it came from, Konami wasn't making games anymore. They hadn't made a like an actual, like, Koji Igarashi style Castlevania since 2008 with Order of Ecclesia.
Right.
So, and people were just begging for a new Castlevania to come back. And he saw that as an opportunity and just, started his own thing. He took the risk, he took the gamble, and it worked out well for him. He has 3 successful games under his belt now. 2 Curse of the Moon games and Bloodstain, Ritual of the Moon.
At what point do they leave the Kickstarter nest? Like, do they eventually find a publisher that believes in them and, they don't rely on Kickstarter? It seems like that's like Kickstarter is meant to kind of just, like you're a flightless little bird. You're like,
you need help. Yeah.
Yeah. Go be your own thing. When does it stop? Does it ever stop? I don't know.
Well, they did. I know Way Forward kickstarted the 4th Shantae game, and that was successful enough that they just straight out made the 5th game with no Kickstarter.
There you go.
Yeah,
learn to fly.
See, that's ideal, because even if you look at the developer for Shadows of Adam, something classic, they're small, right? But they're starting to just publish indie games now. They did Pillars of Dust. They didn't create the game, but they're helping publish it, and I'm trying to remember the other game now, but they're publishing another indie game now. So I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, eventually, crowdfunding should be where you start, but that you shouldn't be have your own office building and still be crowdfunding stuff.
Right.
That seems a little ridiculous. So
I can tell you the worst case is again Mighty Number 9, because
we really don't like
while
that
was still in development and in development hell on top of it, they started a second Kickstarter campaign
for a different game
while they were still doing the Kickstarter campaign for their first one, Red Ash. They were trying to bring a Mega Man Legends like game back with that. So they were already making a franchise out of Mighty Number 9. They were creating TV shows and toys and everything for it before the game even came out. And then they were trying to get Red Ash up and going on the Kickstarter, which the Kickstarter failed, by the way, because people were already at the point they were fed up with the lack of development updates, or in the fact that the game never coming out, which it eventually did, but people were under that impression. But China bought Red Ash, and we've never heard from the game since.
Yeah, so
that's the history behind it. So they were doing a double Kickstarter when they couldn't even prove their first one.
Yeah, so it's definitely some bad cases there for sure. Let's go ahead and keep moving on here, because this lasted a little bit longer than we expected, but that's okay. So let's just go ahead and jump into, first off, we want to announce the people that are going to be involved with the voting process of the next game that we are going to be talking about. So just for those that need the background information, we are going to pick one of 5 games. It's either going to be Final Fantasy 15, the Royal Edition. So we trashed the first game, but we'll revisit it with all the added content if that's what you want us to talk about. Or we'll do Final Fantasy 9, or we're going to do Super Mario RPG, or we'll do Tales of Vesperia, or we'll do Ni no Kuni. So we're JRPGing it up, and I think that's great. So one of those 5 games are going to be the games that we're going to be talking about next in a spoiler fashion. We'll devote an entire episode to it. But those that are able to vote on this are those that took part in our mystery character guessing segment of our podcast episodes. So at the top of the scoreboard here, we have Idris Pieces with 8 correct points. Then we have at equal stature, we have CarQuest Camaro with 8 points. Then we have Unbound Monado with 4 points. Dan Quest or Dan K with 4 points, Berserker Barrage or Cody Murley with 4, Andrew Harrison with 2, Bryce Parker with 2, Kyle Moore with 1, and Brandon Badger with 1. So if you believe that you guessed something correct and we didn't put your name on there, let us know and we'll get you on there. But if you are one of those people that I just mentioned, go ahead and let me know or let us know in the comments what game that you would like us to talk about, and we will go ahead and put your name in there and the points that you have and what you guessed into the scoreboard, and we'll let you know. We'll do this for a week or two. That way, in case you miss this, we'll give you an opportunity. But it's Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, Final Fantasy 9, Super Mario RPG, Tales of Vesperia, or Ni no Kuni. Those are the 5 games. And I
love the vote.
Well, I mean, you already kind of voted because we came up with this list of games right here, and yeah, I was surprised you picked Final Fantasy 15.
Oh no.
You did. You put an X next to it. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think that
Oh
was
no,
going
I
to happen.
didn't.
Well,
I did no such thing. You sit on the throne of lies, good sir.
I think me and Stan watched you do it. So, anyways.
Hey, by the way, folks, you can vote, but we go on an electoral college like system, so just letting you know.
No. Well,
I'm just kidding.
Oh, you meant
really.
Final Fantasy 15, and he kind of just made it look like he selected it.
But he really meant Dragon Quest 8. No, that's what he meant. Anyways, so there's that. Let us know. And I also want to tell you all about our media partner, RPGFan.com. They just created a new website or updated their website. They've transferred from their old settings to WordPress, which is much easier for them to update. And it's got a little bit of a new look to it. It's a little jazzier looking, a little more modern. So definitely go check it out. But they've been doing RPG news and game reviews since the late 90s. They got soundtrack reviews on there. They got other podcasts on there, including our own. They have Random Encounter on there and Retro Encounter, the 2 biggest ones. And they've been great to work with. They sometimes shoot us codes to record games with, game footage for their video reviews, because they're starting to push their YouTube page more. That's kind of been in the past. They've been more on the written review side, but they're trying to, do the YouTube thing as well. So they've been great to work with, and we really want you guys to go check them out. So definitely go check them out. But moving on, let's talk about our favorite Switch RPG. Gio, since you are famously part of a podcast called SwitchRPG, why don't you start off with what is your favorite Switch RPG?
Very famously, and it's actually a Kickstarter game, right? That we didn't even mention.
Oh boy,
I mentioned it when we recorded, but didn't record the last episode. Divinity Original Sin 2. Yeah. Divinity Original Sin 2 is another Kickstarter game, successfully, might I add. The game is tremendous. It tells a tremendous story from beginning to end. I love the combat in it. Again, we mentioned it with Eiyuden Chronicle, kind of that tactical height advantages, tactical combat really interests me. With Divinity Original Sin 2, you can kind of mess with the battlefield a little bit. There's a lot of elemental type of stuff in there in the combat. I've played this game over probably 3 times. I think 3 times at this point. It's fully voiced. It's got everything I ever wanted in our RPG. I love playing tabletop games. Right now, for me, this is the closest I'll get to that.
Right.
Maybe when Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, it'll be a different story. But for right now, Divinity Original Sin 2, I played it initially on PC. Then I went to the Xbox world, the forgotten console at this point, and then I jumped in on the Switch. Now, granted, yes, it doesn't look as good as the Xbox or PC, but it plays well. It really does.
Yeah.
They've done well with updating it, keeping it up to date. I love that game. Absolutely love that game.
Here's the beautiful thing about it is that if you happen to own the PC and the Switch version, like the real big benefit here is while you're at home, you can play it on the PC. But if you got to go out and travel somewhere for work and you're going to be at a hotel, it's awesome that you can put it up on a cloud save, and then you can just play it on your Switch while you're out. And that's a really awesome thing. And I know Witcher 3 does the same thing. And I wish more companies look at that and get up on it. I think that's a really awesome thing to do, to have like a PC version and a Switch version coexist with each other in that fashion.
Yeah, I totally agree. Gio, I'm curious. You were talking about, the types of the tabletop based games that you like. And then also you talked about, Baldur's Gate 3 coming out, that might be something you would be interested in. Did you try the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 on the Switch? Because I played that on PC a long time ago, and I was just kind of curious how that would play on Switch, if it would work.
I got to tell you, I've grown to hate the real time with pause games, the old school CRPGs. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just I just think it's like an outdated mechanic,
right?
And it's just not for me. They're way too text heavy. I think, again, in my age, I'm impatient and I don't want to read everything. Just tell it to me. I want to hear it. And they're way too text heavy. I don't like the combat system in it at all. I don't know. I just like the way Divinity does it with the stop time, turn based, everybody do their thing, RPG, and that's kind of what they're doing with Baldur's Gate 3. And I know there are a lot of people that really don't like it, but that's too bad.
Yeah. On that note, I know with Baldur's Gate 2 for the remaster, or whatever you want to call it, they tried to go back and they tried to create another mode that created like a turn-based combat, and apparently like everyone hated it.
Yeah. Well, I think though the people that hated it are the kind of the people that really wanted the real time with pause.
Okay, because I guess that's really the same thing. If that's not what you didn't like about the other one, was the slowness factor, making a turn-based version isn't better. Yeah.
I don't know. I did the same thing with Pillars of Eternity. Like the Switch version of Pillars of Eternity is absolutely broken. Do not buy it. But even then, I had a really hard time managing all the party members and the AI all at the same time. Like they were absolutely driving me insane. In one part, it was like a little mini boss in Pillars of Eternity, and no matter how I set them up, no matter what the formation was, no matter what I wanted the AI to do in my party, they just did the same thing. They all went in a line and attacked the boss and just got annihilated. And it just got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm just done with it. And that was only 2 hours into this game. That game is longer than that, a lot longer than that. And I couldn't do it. I had to put the game down. No, I haven't played it since.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. I think for me on the Switch, it's really weird because most of the games that I would actually pick are ports, but it just goes back to Witcher 3 on the Switch. That's what I said last time, and I'll just kind of repeat myself again here. Is just I really like that game on PS4. I own it on PC, but I really liked playing it on the Switch too for some reason. Yeah, it doesn't look as good as on the PS4 or PC, but it surprisingly runs really well, and it never hits a lower frame rate than Xenoblade Chronicles, which is baffling. I just like to jab that as much as I can. But yeah, I mean, it looks really good for what it is. They also did a really cool thing where they put into the game with a patch the ability to change the specs and tweak the game like you have on PC. So you can put like anti-aliasing on, you can turn down the motion blur, and you can do all sorts of different things to kind of customize your experience, and you can get a lot cleaner of an image, and if that's what you want. And so the game runs well. It runs at 30 frames per second, which is fine. It's on, for a Switch, I didn't really expect more than that, but it's perfectly playable. And to be able to play that in portable mode, like Eric said, we can take it to PC if we want and then put it back on Switch. It's just a really cool game to have in mobile. And it was really exciting too when that game was announced, because I remember we were talking about that game on here and the rumor that it was coming to the Switch. And I can't remember what y'all said, but I remember I was very, very not having it. I was like, there's no way this game can come to the Switch. There's no way. And then I was watching that Nintendo Direct or whatever it was. Or well, it wasn't a Direct. It was, I think it was their E3 presentation. And that Witcher trailer came on and I jumped out of my chair because I was just like, I could not believe that this game was coming to the Switch, and I thought for sure it was going to play like crap, and then it started getting reviews, and people were like, it actually runs pretty good. So that's just one of the best ports I've ever seen to the Switch. And it like literally any game that comes to the Switch that doesn't run well, it's just instantly put to shame because of that game, because it's just like you can make it work if you want to. So, and that wasn't made on Unreal Engine, it was its own engine. Like all the problems that people claim are an issue, this thing just annihilated. So, I highly recommend playing on the Switch. You get all the expansions, you get everything. It's an excellent version to play. And yeah, check it out if you haven't. But Stan, what do you got? What's your favorite RPG on the Switch?
Well, you just mentioned it. It's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition.
Yeah.
And really it's because the original game is top 10, top 5, I'm not sure where it lands, RPG for me, total of all of them, basically. And this is basically just the best version of the game that's ever come out. So
right.
That's the main reason. It's not without its issues. They changed the art style for the main cast mostly, especially the younger characters, Shulk and Fiora. They have much more of a
Fountain of Youth.
Anime look to them, which is not preferred, but I got used to it pretty quickly. It didn't detract
agreed.
And like you mentioned, it's not optimized as well as it could be in terms of performance, because we have games like The Witcher 3 on the Switch, yet
right.
Port of a Wii game that runs at 30 frames.
Yeah, and sub 540p resolution sometimes.
Yeah. The overall graphical facelift that they gave to the game improves the look of the game.
Yeah.
And then there's also all kinds of quality of life features that they made for the questing system and other improvements that we've talked about in the past. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite RPG on the Switch, though I haven't played enough of my Switch. I still need to get into like Fire Emblem Three Houses and some other games. So
Three Houses.
I will say the UI improvements revamp alone makes Xenoblade Definitive Edition the definitive edition.
Yeah,
like, people can say what they want about the new graphics and the resolution or something like that, but damn, like I can't go back to the old UI now.
same thing with me.
They did such a good job fixing so many problems I had with the original, because I love the original Xenoblade to death, but I will never defend that clunky UI and hard to navigate through type of deal. And they just fixed almost all of it.
All right, Eric, what's your favorite RPG on the Switch?
Dragon Quest XI S.
Oh, I thought you were gonna Animal Crossings or something.
Oh, but man, this version of Dragon Quest XI improves
being ported to the Xbox.
Yeah, it's being ported now. I've said this before, and it's still going to be my same answer. Damn it! And it has. I mean, they did so many improvements to the original game. First off, they added a whole complete 2D mode, which I played and completed that also. That is a awesome way to play the game again if you've already played the 3D version the first time. I highly recommend playing your second time in the 2D mode. They added the orchestrated version of the music. They added more side quests to the game. They added whole new story content to the game. I mean, there's a lot of improvements they did, and definitely in the combat system and everything like that. And it definitely earned its definitive edition also. It may not look as good as the PS4 PC versions of the original game, but that is definitely a trade-off I'm willing to accept with all the great features they added onto the game.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting that of all the games that we picked, all 4 of them are ports.
I knew you were gonna say this.
Yeah. Well,
Nintendo Switch is the greatest port machine ever made.
Makes money. It makes money.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, once.
But it's not to say that the game, like the Switch, doesn't have like good exclusive RPGs, right? I mean, they have some decent ones. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is really, really good. Fire Emblem Three Houses is one.
Yeah.
Octopath Traveler for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
For as much as
a demo is great demo.
What's that?
It had a great demo.
It had a great, excellent demo.
I really enjoyed that demo. That was a great demo. Yeah.
Mario Rabbids.
Yeah, Mario plus Rabbids. You have Golf Story. When you want to get into some of like the indie ones, the like Golf Story is freaking phenomenal. I'm just trying to look. I'm trying to get a list here right now, but there are some good ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo was smart, and they really try to push a lot of these ports to have unique content in it that's exclusive to the Switch, which kind of gives it a unique vibe. Crosscode, for example, has a unique side quest or two in there that's unique to the Switch. That's story based, right? So that way people feel like if they're huge Crosscode fans, you got to buy that version. We kind of got that with Dragon Quest XI. You had the unique story content that was unique to that version. Xenoblade Chronicles, I guess it's a Nintendo game, but still, it had the prologue in there. So there's interesting things that they do to try to like jazz it up. So it's got a little bit more of a unique experience, but it's funny. I talk to everyone, and almost everyone's favorite RPG on the Switch is a port. And it just goes back to that portability. I mean, people really like that. So,
well, that's what Nintendo was missing for a long time, was third-party support, and now they're finally getting it. And you can see what happens when Nintendo product actually gets third-party support. It does very, very well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, what have you been playing? Let's top this thing off with what we've been playing. Gio, why don't you start us off?
Well, I just finished one of the ugliest games that's been ported over, The Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds has
you played it entirely on the Switch?
For a second time, yes, I did.
For oh my God.
YouTube, for the YouTube channel. That's what I do. And boy, will it is if you could take like a 540p Outer Worlds from like the Xbox One world or PS4 world, and then smear your screen with peanut butter, right? And then squint your eyes, and you have the Outer Worlds on the Switch. It looks just like that. Now,
sounds delicious.
You just licking your screen already. Now, there were a lot of problems, right? It just looked really, really muddy. It's lacking so many like textures that are in the other games. There's so much pop-in. Like there was enemy pop-in. Like I would be running to a location, all of a sudden I'm bombarded by like higher level enemies and just party wiped. But I played through it. I just finished it the other day. I'm playing Fairy Tail. I just got that. It's an anime game. I will just say that it's very good. I love the combat animations. They're very anime-esque, and the writing is very tropey. So I mean, you got that going for it. I actually had to get my Switch, and I had to remind myself what I've been playing. Paper Mario and Arafel. So doing a little bit of Paper Mario. I'm at the second stream, Blue Stream, and Arafel Enhanced Edition. Really enjoying that one too.
I picked Arafel up on my Switch, and I played it for a little bit. I really liked it, but I had so many different things that I have to play that I haven't gone back to it. But I'm glad you brought it up because now it's on the mental checklist. It's going to be
there. You go.
Be something I'm going to pick up again. Eric, you said you were playing Paper Mario as well, right?
I am mixed up that and getting myself ready in FF14 for the next patch coming out next Tuesday.
Oh yeah, 5 point something, right?
5.3.
Yep,
and it's gonna be a big one in terms of story. So I'm really looking forward to it and get myself back into the flow of it.
Are you going to be on next week's podcast, or are you going to?
Lucky for you, it comes out the day after we do podcast.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to...
But I may not be here for the week after.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm sick that day.
Yeah, don't blame you. Stan, what do you been? Well, I'm sorry, Eric. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before?
Nope.
Okay. Stan, what do you got? What have you been playing?
The game I just mentioned, Xenoblade Chronicles. So I beat the game just recently, and then I started the extra story, the
Epilogue or
prologue
prologue?
with Shulk and Fiora and these or Shulk and Melia, excuse me, and the two Nopon characters. And I'm enjoying it so far, but I am very close to turning off the character voices in the battle. Like
No.
just because they have this added feature where you're now collecting Nopon across the land, and they follow you and they engage and fight with you in the battle. So I could handle Ricky in the battle in the party every once in a while. He's like, he has his moments, But now I sometimes have 2 Nopon characters and maybe even up to 12 Nopon characters, and it's getting a little out of hand sometimes, having all these characters all screaming their attack. So
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I might have to mute them for a while, at least while I'm grinding. Maybe like the story battles, I turn it back on or something. But
as you can see, they could only get the voices of Shulk and Milia back.
Yeah,
They couldn't have added one more character to balance it out. It was
yeah.
no
So I've been playing that. I also took a break to play Last of Us Part 2, which I was a big fan of the first game, and then I played through the second one.
No, you're not a fan? Well, let's not spoil it for anyone, but
I won't spoil anything. I'll just say I didn't enjoy the second one as much as I did the first one, even though there's things in the second one that are better, like improved over the first game. So
yeah,
it's kind of a weird thing. Like it's got parts that are better, but the first one I've felt was a really good game because it was kind of the whole was better than the sum of its parts situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It did everything competently, but then the acting and like the writing and the characters were like really well done, and that kind of elevated it, which otherwise like the gameplay was kind of above average or mediocre, I guess you could say.
Right.
It wasn't fantastic. But the second one has, like, in my opinion, improved the gameplay tremendously. It's still the same. It's still the same idea. It's not like radically different. It's just improved in a lot of ways. But then I didn't enjoy the story as much in the second one, so it's kind of a
trade-off there.
Bag, yeah.
Well, I would say I hope the gameplay's better. I mean, it's been like 8 years or something like that. Yeah. So I hope it's improved a little bit. But yeah, I still haven't picked that up yet just because there's been so much negativity surrounding it, and I've had other stuff to play. But with
something that's interesting, that's not too much of a spoiler. The little button prompts you get, like the QTEs on the screen.
Okay. Like quick time events,
square or hold triangle or whatever.
Right.
They're all in the color scheme of the new PlayStation 5 controller. Like they're the all white colored button. So I noticed that and I was like, huh, I bet there's going to be a PS5 version of this game like really soon. Mm-hmm. Like really soon. They're going to turn it around pretty fast because they've already changed some of the UI to be kind of the white with like just black symbols in the middle, which matches the controller of the PS5. And then I checked the Last of Us remastered for PS4, the first game, and it still has the pink square button and the green triangle button on the screen, like when you have to push the button. But in Last of Us Part 2, they've already switched the color scheme for the little button prompts.
Interesting.
So I would maybe wait until
the PS5 version. Well, I'm pretty sure it is coming to PS5.
Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been playing a surprising game to probably a lot of people that are listening to this, but I've been playing Persona 5, the Royal Edition, and I don't know what sparked an interest for me to pick this up because I routinely state how I did not like Persona 4 at all. Well, I don't want to say at all. It didn't click with me. I played it for 30 hours. I thought I loved the microphones they were using for the voice acting. It was like butter on my ears. I love the music. I love the art style. And I actually kind of like the story too and the characters, but I just got really tired of coming home I played it later. I didn't play it when it came out. And I would come home from work, tired wanting to play a video game, and in the game that I'm playing, they'd be like, I would have to go to like a store and work. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. I just got home from work, So I was just like, and then like I kept wanting to go to the dungeon, and like I'd have to go to drama club instead. And I think I was just too stressed out with like every time an NPC wanted me to do something, I felt obligated to do it because I was afraid I was going to miss something. And I just wanted to go back and like go to the palaces and so anyways, I ended up stopping, and I just was like, I don't like Persona. And I picked up Persona 5, and I like Persona 5 way more than Persona 4. Persona 5 is a much better game than Persona 4 Golden. I never played Golden. I played the one on the PS2. So it's much better than the PS2 Persona 4, in my opinion. I think that it just eases you into all this stuff a lot slower. I think it lets the story kind of simmer. I think it's got some really powerful moments early on. I think stylistically it's taken it up a notch. I mean, it's just, and like the UI, it just pops and like caves in like so naturally and so organically. It just feels very good to play. And I'm just really impressed with the game. I think it's a really good game. So I'm going to keep playing it. I've kind of accepted this is going to be one of those games that I will play for a week or two, and then I'll not play for like a month, and then I'll play for a weekend, and I won't play, and it's probably going to take me like a year and a half to beat or longer, but I'm okay with that. I'm playing it at the pacing that I feel comfortable with. And I think this game is kind of one of those slow burn games. I don't think Persona 5 is really built for you to try to like power through in like 5 days. At least I don't have that time. I don't have that kind of time. So
most people playtime is between 80 and 100 hours, depending on how much you do.
Yeah. So it's going to take me forever because we're not reviewing it for the podcast. So it's not going to be prioritized. If we're going to talk about a game for the podcast, I'll play that game even if I don't feel like playing that game. I'll still play it. But
if you want to know how bad it can get as a completionist, watch The Completionist video.
Oh, yeah. I watched it. Yeah.
I think it destroyed him. I think
Dude, yeah, he said it'd been like 2 years. He'd been working on it for like 2 years, and he just didn't complete it. He was like, I went through it like several times or something like that. And I was just like, you guys can just take this review for what it is.
What he did should not ever be a requirement to be considered 100% completion of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
That
for sure.
Insane. But no human should do that.
Yeah. But anyways, so that's what we've been playing this week, and I think that's going to end the podcast today. So, Gio, really appreciate you coming out and joining the podcast this week. Again, it's the second time you've been on, but this is the first time for all of our audience. So I'm glad you're able to come back and join us this week, and definitely want everyone to go check out your stuff again. So just like give everybody what's the URL for your website, and we'll have your stuff in the description, but just in case they're audio listeners.
Yeah, SwitchRPG.com. You can basically find everything I do and we do there, including the podcast, the YouTube channel, all the reviews, op-eds, all that stuff. But if you just wanted to go to YouTube, it's youtube.com/SwitchRPG. You can find the podcast, SwitchRPG Podcast, it's on everything. At least that's how at least that's what Anchor.fm tells me.
That's what they promise. Let us know in the description if you cannot find it somewhere. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's everywhere. So, but yeah, thank you guys for having me on a second time and having to deal with me a second time.
No, it's been
but
a pleasure.
I appreciate you guys having me on though.
Yeah, great to have you. Hopefully we'll have to deal with you a third time.
Oh no, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure we will though. But thank you again, and thank you all for listening this week. Again, if you were one of those people that I called out, let us know what you want. We got Edric Pieces, CarQuest Camaro, Unbound Monado, Dan K, Berserker Barrage / Cody Murley, Andrew Harrison, Bryce Parker, Kyle Moore, and Brandon Badger. If you're one of those people, let us know what game you want us to play. Again, it's Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, Final Fantasy 9, Super Mario RPG, Tales of Vesperia, or Ni no Kuni. So those are the game lineup for a future discussion. Just need to get that out there one more time. But thank you again, guys, for checking us out, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Take care.
See you next time.